Okay, welcome back everyone for Yoga Sutra Immersion Day 2. So let me begin by a short invocation chant that you heard from Sumitra yesterday. I will chant the 3 verses along with the Tamil verse on Ganesha. Om ஐந்து கரத்தனை ஆனை முகத்தனை இந்தின் நிளம்பிறை போன்ற எயிற்றினை நந்தி மகந்தனை ஞான குழுந்தினை பொந்தியில் வைத்தடி போற்றுகின்றேனே. யஸ்த்யக்த்வா ரூபமாத்யம் பிரபவதி ஜகதः அநேகதா அனுக்ரஹாய பிரக்ஷீண क्लेशराशिः विषम विषधरः अनेकवक्त्रः सुभोगी सर्वज्ञानप्रसूतिः भुजगपरिकरः प्रीतये यस्य नित्यम् देवो हीशः सवोव्यात् सितविमलतनुः योगदो योगयुक्तः योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं। श्रीमते अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः। अस्मदाचार्येभ्यः सर्वेभ्यो नमो नमः। ओम। So welcome back once again. So today we are going to examine the section of Yoga Sutras that talk about the value of practice and the value of having a detached mind and why these two are important. So let us connect with what we studied yesterday. Yesterday, we looked at the definition of yoga. We looked at 7 different definitions of yoga, and Patanjali defines yoga as chitta vritti nirodha, where chitta is defined as the mind or the screen in which all the activities is presented to the Purusha. The movie of life is presented to the self in the screen of the mind. What we also saw is that the world presents itself to us through the chitta vrittis. Unless something outside registers in the mind, we don't perceive it. So it has to register in the screen of the mind. The screen is the chitta, and to register something, to make a mark on the screen of the chitta, that mark is the vritti. And in order to remove the chitta vrittis or transcend the chitta vrittis, that is when we realize the self. Otherwise, our mind gets caught up in all the activities of the movie. It's like somebody is watching a movie and the drama of the movie going on. So we cry in the movie, there is some humor there, there is some romance there, and there is some tragedy, and there is action, there is intensity, sometimes there is peace. So all this drama is taking place. Just like when we watch a movie, our emotions get modulated by what the movie is presenting to us. But deep inside, we know that I'm not the movie. In other words, just because there's a tragedy in the movie, it's not that I'm getting affected by it. There's a saying, when we know that we are not affected by what is happening, it's just a drama, we enjoy it. We enjoy it. So in yoga, when we realize that whatever is happening outside is not touching the self, I am pure. In the sense, even if you take a diamond and put it in a garbage or in a gutter, and it still retains its value, it's still pure. So you just have to brush it, or you just have to clean it a little bit, and its sparkle, its shine is once again re-established. So like that, when we realize that whatever is happening in our life, the movie called life, that we are just watching it, we are not getting affected deep within, we actually enjoy the life experience. It's like watching a movie. Wow, my life has an amazing storyline. Like that, we start enjoying it. So that is called Avarana Rahita Vikshepa in Sanskrit. So there are two things that they talk about. Avarana means covering. Covering means you are not aware of it. We forget it. We forget it. If you forget that you are watching a movie, you get so engrossed in that movie and it starts bothering you. So that is avarana. That means forgetfulness. And then vikshepa. Vikshepa means projection. Projection. It's like there's a dream in the mind. Dream is one of the 5 types of vrittis, right? So it projects the play in the dream in the chitta akasha. Yesterday we saw the different akashas, right? The chitta akasha. It projects the movie in the chitta akasha. So that projection is called vikshepa. Vikshepa. Even the things that we see in the real world, the so-called real world, it's actually projected in the chitta akasha. Just like whatever we perceive it on the screen of the mind. Whatever we project, also we project in the screen of the mind, in the chitta akasha. You see? So the perception as well as projection, both of them happen in the chitta.
So this avarana rahita vikshepa, what is the entire meaning?
So avarana is the covering that causes ignorance, that makes us forget our true identity. And vikshepa is projection. So avarana and vikshepa are how the chitta distorts the truth that is present to us. Avarana and vikshepa. So in order to transcend the vrittis, we need to quiet the mind, right? In other words, if we get caught up in the movie, then we have to remind ourselves that I'm not the movie, I'm something different. And in order to transcend the chitta vrittis, Patanjali says, I'm going to give you a upaya. Upaya means a remedial measure. What to do in order to transcend the chitta vrittis. Would you like to know what is the way? So if you look at the Yoga Sutras, right, the first 12 sutras, yesterday we saw the first 4. It says, what is yoga? Yoga is a self-discipline. Yoga is transcending the chitta vrittis. Yoga is being in a place of equilibrium. Yoga samadhi, according to Vyasa's commentary. And then he talks about the chitta vrittis as being 5 types. 5 of them can be compressed into 2 types. Right? That's what we saw. 5 can be reduced to 2 types. And then he goes and talks about each of the 5 vrittis: pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, and smriti. And we saw that yesterday. So he diagnoses the chitta vrittis. That's a diagnosis. And next he says, okay, by the time you come to this point, 12 sutras, I'm sure you're wondering about, okay, please tell me how to transcend the chitta vrittis. I agree with you. It's a good idea to transcend the chitta vrittis. I hope Patanjali did a good sales job, right? Sales pitch, that you have to transcend the chitta vrittis. So how to achieve that? What is the upaya? What are the remedies available to transcend the chitta vrittis is what we are going to examine today. Even if our goal is not the highest, namely self-realization or a deep spiritual experience, it has its benefits practically as well. Having a quiet mind, it helps us lead a joyful life, not getting caught up in all the chaos outside, and also to make better decisions. You see, how many of us have heard the name Captain Sullenberger? Would you like to share what he's famous for?
Sorry, I might be confusing. Is he the army person that spoke about? No, I can't remember exactly.
So Captain Sullenberger, he was the famous pilot who landed the aircraft on the Hudson River.
Yeah.
So it was in the year 2008,
Yeah.
New York, LaGuardia Airport, the US Airways aircraft, it took off. Yes, there was a movie also on him. So as soon as the aircraft took off with 155 passengers and 12 crew members, it hit a flock of birds and both the engines got disabled. The primary engine, also the backup engine, both of them got disabled. And he had to think of something quick so that he can save, he can bring the aircraft down and land it safely. So he was able to maneuver the aircraft and land it on the Hudson River, and he saved the life of everybody. And the co-pilots and all the crew members, they describe Captain Sullenberger as, they gave him a name, Captain Cucumber. Cucumber, because he was so cool-headed, level-headed, that even in the midst of such a challenging situation, right? Can you imagine? So many people's lives are in his hand, and he had to think clearly. And he made the right decisions at the right time because his mind was clear. Imagine if the mind was filled with chittavrittis, right? Oh my God, what do I need to do now? Please, God, help me. And he tells all the passengers, please pray for me so that I land the thing correctly. And with that agitated state of mind, we do not give our best. So this is one of the key ideas. When we are in the place of samatva, equilibrium, we allow excellence to happen in our actions. And we will revisit this point later. If you want to excel in any task, the best foundation you can give is an equanimous state of mind. Equanimous state of mind. We're able to think better. Bhagavad Gita says it explicitly. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yogastha Kuru Karmani. This is shloka number 48 of the second chapter. Yogastha Kuru Karmani. Be in yoga first and then do your actions. Do not reverse the order. In other words, do not do actions for the sake of happiness. Do actions as an expression of happiness, not an expectation of happiness. Very, very important. Okay. Now, how do we transcend the chittavrittis? How can I bring this monkey mind to a place of equilibrium, stability and equilibrium, right? So Patanjali gives the recipe, the upaya, the remedial measures. Would you like to know what is the upaya? The upaya is, I'm sure many of you already know this. Would you like to share? In fact, it's in the whiteboard.
Abhyasa and Vairagya.
Yes.
AbhyasaVairagya Bhyam Tan Nirodha.
Exactly, that is the sutra. AbhyasaVairagya Bhyam Tan Nirodha. So there are two things we need in order to bring the mind to a place of centeredness, equilibrium, or chitta vritti nirodha. Two things we need. And this is not a new teaching by Patanjali. You will see the same teaching presented in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's the 36th or 35th verse, where Krishna says, Asamshayam mahabaho manodur nigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. He tells Arjuna, oh Arjuna, I agree with you. The mind is very restless. It's like the turbulent wind, like a hurricane. It is very hard to quiet the mind, but it can be done if you use Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasa means practice. It's a very familiar word, right? What is Abhyasa? Yoga Abhyasa, we say, the practice. And the other half of the equation is Vairagya. And we are going to see what is Vairagya. So that will be the topic for the next maybe hour or so. So are we ready to do a deep dive on Abhyasa and Vairagya? So Patanjali gives 4 sutras on this topic, and we are going to examine that. How many of us think it is a good idea to practice yoga on a regular basis? Wow, what a surprise, right? It's obvious. That's why we are here, right? If we don't see the value in yoga, we may not even be here. So all of us want to practice. We think it's a good idea. My teacher used to say, it's a good idea to implement a good idea, right? Sometimes we have a lot of good ideas, but we don't follow through with them. That itself is an abhyasa, to practice, to make it manifest. All the good ideas that we have here, to make it manifest, is a good idea in itself. So let us see how we can define abhyasa. What is abhyasa? So let's do a little brainstorm. What would be your definition of practice?
Something that you do consistently.
Something that is done consistently. Okay, that is one of the things we're going to see later. Yeah.
It is a
And something you do
self-study.
perfect a particular, whatever you want to learn, you want to perfect it. That's
In order
the
to
intention.
achieve a siddhi, in Sanskrit they call it siddhi, to attain some level of excellence or perfection. And the things, in other words, sadhana is something that you do to achieve a siddhi. And the person who does it is called sadhaka. And the devices and techniques is called sadhanam. So a sadhaka uses sadhana to achieve a siddhi. Right? Yes, Anujaji.
But I think before
Self-study, abhyasa means self-study.
Yes, in fact, that is swadhyaya. Patanjali uses a different term for that, swadhyaya. But abhyasa can also involve self-study. Swadhyaya is a subset of abhyasa. Yes, self-study. Yes.
yeah, but besides the abhyasa, what you do, the regular practice of yoga, is yoga on the mat and yoga off the mat also, right?
Brilliant point.
So
Yes.
that is very important, off the mat, because then you're doing 24/7 yoga.
Correct.
Even yoga nidra, whatever you're doing
Yes.
with mindfulness and,
Yes.
and grace. While eating, also mindful eating,
Correct.
mindful walking, whatever.
Yes. In fact, if somebody is a great yogi inside the yoga mat, but great bhogi outside the yoga mat, then truly they are not a yogi.
Yeah.
It's like you have a nice, amazing dish somebody has prepared, but I'm going to put a little bit of poison there. Then the whole thing is you cannot eat it. So by putting the seed of bhoga, that is away from yoga, then there's no point in giving the foundation. It's like I'm going to make a little hole in the tire. So the whole thing will be flat, right? So 24/7, we are a yoga abhyasi. That's how Patanjali is going to define. We're going to see the definition in a few moments. But before that, what else comes to your mind in yoga abhyasa?
It becomes your second nature.
Yes. So that allows us to revisit one point that we made yesterday. How are all these practices in yoga? Where do they come from? Right? All these practices comes by watching people who are doing excellent things. Watch a yogi. What do? They are kind always. They take care of the body. They keep the mind sharp by doing maybe pranayama, all the practices they do to sharpen the mind, keep the body in a place of stability and comfort. So whatever they do, we watch them. Or you watch a dog, it does yoga every day. Watch a baby, it does yoga asanas every day. So those who are attuned to their body's intelligence, watch them, and that becomes our practice, right? Siddhasya lakshanani sadhakasya sadhanani. That which comes naturally for a siddha becomes the sadhana, the practice for a sadhaka. So by doing all these practices as a sadhaka, when we achieve that siddhi, that means it becomes our second nature, right? For example, people do a lot of sadhana when they practice, say, music or dance, right? A lot of sadhana. For example, I practice violin. It takes a lot of time. to move the fingers and identify the position of the notes. And you have to practice every day. A master musician, they won't even think, where do I keep my finger? Their attention is on the music. The skill in playing the instrument becomes second nature. In fact, it becomes a first nature also, not just second nature. They become the music. See? So it becomes their siddhi. It's no longer something distant that I have to work for. It becomes their nature. So all the practices that we do, it becomes our nature. We just roll the yoga mat and practice, not because, oh, I need to do sadhana. This is what has become my second nature now. So let me do the yoga sadhana now. What else about practice?
Anna, I think it also helps you go from the gross to the subtle in a lot of ways. For example, in dance, we start with our body, which is the adabu. We do geometric patterns with our body. And then we journey into abhinaya, which is the facial expression. And initially, it is just learning from your teacher by hearting what is taught. And then you start doing it. And then you start experiencing at different stage of your life. It manifests in a totally different way. And the hand gestures become lesser and lesser and lesser. And then it gets reduced to almost like a Mani Ratna movie, where there is no more dialogues or eloquent dialogues or body language, nothing. It's just a glance and everything is conveyed.
Yes.
Right? So I think it also helps you go from the gross to the subtle as you practice.
Correct. In other words, when we are caught up at the body level, then it becomes a mechanical practice, right? So the more deeper we go, when we also engage the heart and soul into it, we bring excellence. We're talking about excellence so many times today. So we bring excellence when we give the deepest part of ourselves with the practice. And when we give our best version, the deepest version, then the body need not even express itself. It expresses through our presence rather than our actions. That's why we are called human beings. You're being that, not human doing. You're not doing anything. Human being. Right? It reminds me of the first verse of the Dakshinamurti Stotram. Dakshinamurti Stotram, it starts as Mauna Vyakya Prakatita Param. That means that teaching of Dakshinamurti was through silence. He was able to convey it from that space just by, subtle mudras or subtle gestures, or even by look, even the way in which the eyes convey the whatever is communicated, it's more powerful than just words. By the time we reduce the emotion to words, we have already lost a lot of it. We are projecting something very deep into the level of words. So we engaging the deepest.
So regular practice is important, but it's perfect practice that counts. If, for example, when you talk about golf, you take a swing, you can do 100 swings, you can do 1,000 swings.
But a mindful
you need to have that mindfulness to do it correctly. Then when you're out in playing, and when there's all this pressure, there is $1 million in front of you for one shot, you're not thinking about the shot, but it just comes because you've hit 1,000 balls before, and that's what you want
Correct.
to do. So that's, besides the excellence, it's that perfectness in the thing, because then you talk about the second nature. So that's what that happens. It will just come in your subconscious mind, it's already there. So you're not thinking, for example, a baseball player is hitting a ball. At the time when he's hitting, he's not thinking about it. You cannot think.
It just happens in a fraction of a second.
Right.
Yes.
Because you cannot think and do it. You just let it happen.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, if our mind is caught up with, will I get the $1 million? Then part of our prana is gone.
Correct.
We are not giving our full here. That's what is called Vairagya. And we're going to see that in a bit. Vairagya means we are not tempted by some reward, or you're not trying to run away from some danger. You're simply giving your best. And we will talk about that Vairagya as well.
I have a question. So we spoke about being mindful or being in the situation that it should become part of you. So for a beginner, because the mind is also subtle, it also takes its time to arrive at that, right? So for a beginner, wouldn't just the body movement itself be they may not be mindful, they may not be, it's not their second nature. They're just doing it mechanically. And that ultimately draws them to, them to become mindful. So my question here is that when we stress so much on mindfulness, can it sometimes distract a beginner? Oh, but I'm not being mindful, so this is not a good practice. But initially it's okay. Is it okay to start in a mechanical way?
Yeah, Patanjali agrees with you. So what Patanjali says is, when you look at the Ashtanga Yoga, you start from the outer, because unless you have the cooperation from the body, you cannot go deep inwards. If you want to sit for meditation and quiet the mind, but if the awareness is caught up in the low back pain or in the knee pain, or some turbulent thoughts regurgitating in the mind again and again, so we have to attend to the body first. So it doesn't resist the meditation, it assists the meditation. So it's okay, start mechanically first, and once the body has settled down, it is easier to go inwards, going from the outer to the inner. It makes sense for a beginning student of yoga. So for a beginning student, no need to even talk about meditation. Okay, start with the body. Just by doing a sequence of yoga postures, at the end of the class, they experience some deep state of mind, deep relaxation, right? And so slowly you start from the outside and allow yourself to go within. Just like what Sumitra said, starting with the practices for the body, and then more subtle, the abhinayas, the gestures, and then the facial expressions and so forth, right? The mudras and abhinayas. So yes, starting from the outside to the inside. And later on, when we talk about these three types of abhyasas, we're going to examine that a little more.
And I think it's also systematic and a simple step-by-step progress. Instead of like just putting everything at once, just becomes very overwhelming for a beginner.
Yes.
So you just take them step-by-step, baby steps, and then the first step would have been more familiar. When you're in the fifth step, you would have already walked in the
Correct.
same stairways a couple of times. So it's not a new space. So it's something that you're familiar with. So it's easier. So to go step by step.
It works like a compound interest.
Yes.
The next step that you take uses the foundation that you did from the past. Patanjali calls it krama. Krama means step.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sutra in the 3rd chapter. Kramanyatvam parinamanyatve hetuhu. Step by step, sequence of these little steps create an ultimate change or transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So step by step, if you are unable to do a posture today, don't worry, we don't have to torture ourselves into that posture. You go step by step till you reach a boundary of the comfort zone and just leave it at that. Tomorrow's practice, you will notice the boundary has increased a little bit. And slowly we expand the boundary of comfort. And one fine day, we are able to achieve that siddhi, that posture.
On that note, I have read a perspective about yoga practice that really resonated with me, that every day and every time you practice anything, you have to understand what guna you're expressing more dominantly. So, or what your personality is like. If you're kind of a more calmer person, it's probably apt to induce like a more rajasic practice to kind of add another element into your life, and vice versa. And I think it depends on the day and the time and your mood. So practice has to be a little bit dynamic, I guess.
Yes, that brings the point. The practice should be contextual.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For example, someday when the mind is restless or when the mind is angry, the practice should be more calming, relaxing practice. But if a couch potato says, I'm going to do a relaxing practice today, then that may not be a very good idea. They have to move.
Right.
So they say to overcome tamas, tamoguna, you have to do some activity, you have to jump, do something. So the way to overcome tamas is through rajas. You can't go from tamas to sattva directly. You have to go through rajas, shake the system, and then overcome the rajas to reach sattva. Okay, I think
So in
Lataji has
short, can we say abhyasa is shravana, manana, and nididhyasana?
Yeah, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa is given in the Vedantic perspective. In Vedantic literature, they talk about Shravanabhyasa and then Mananabhyasa. Shravana means the practice of listening. It's not just listening to somebody's words, listening to the body. So when you're doing a yoga posture, becoming more sensitive to the body is Shravana. We are actually listening. And Mananam is to reintroduce that thought again and again, so that when we contemplate on the same idea for a long period of time, new insights come. That is Mananam. And the third one is Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam is when the teaching gets integrated. It's no longer a conceptual idea. We live it experientially. It's obvious to us through our experience. It becomes part of us. Like the skill of playing an instrument becomes part of that person.
Oh, so Nididhyasa is not experimental.
Nididhyasanam is to imbibe, absorb it, imbibe it. Okay, Patanjali's definition of Abhyasa is, would you like to know what is Patanjali's definition of Abhyasa? He defines Abhyasa as Tatra Sthitau Yatnaha Abhyasaha. Tatra Sthitau Yatno Bhyasaha. What does it mean? To stand there. That is abiding in the self. To abide in the self, in a place of equilibrium. Whatever device or technique or method or tricks that you use to achieve that goal is called Abhyasa. The skill or device or method, let's say method, whatever method that you use in order for the mind to abide in the self is called Abhyasa. Tatra Sthitau. Patanjali uses a lot of pronouns. Tatra means there. To stand there, whatever you need is Abhyasa. So the question becomes where? For that you have to consult a previous sutra. Where did he say there? Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. That is the sutra that connects this. And we saw this yesterday. Tada drashtuhu swarupe. The seer abides in the nature of the self. So to stand there, whatever you need to do becomes your Abhyasa. Okay. So as Dr. Shroff mentioned, Abhyasa can be done every moment in our life. For example, when we are sitting for a meal, the Abhyasa could be, I'm going to eat nutritious food. I'm not going to overeat. Things like that. It could be an Abhyasa. Otherwise, if we indulge, oh, my tongue says, please give me this. And if we eat junk food, then it is not Abhyasa. It is, we are indulging. We are become a bhogi. We are not a yogi at that point. So for practicing yoga Abhyasa, every moment in our life presents itself an opportunity. Atha, now there's an opportunity to practice Abhyasa. Atha. That's why, as I mentioned yesterday, so whenever someone asked my teacher, how much time should I practice yoga every day? They will be expecting some answer like half an hour or 1 hour. And you will tell them with a very serious face, 24 hours. And it will immediately jolt them. Oh my God. And immediately they will recognize, oh, there's some deeper meaning into it. So every moment we can actually practice Abhyasa. What we do inside the confines of a yoga mat is, we can say it's a sadhana that we are tuning the body, the mind, the instruments of the mind, the intellect, and so on. It's like before you play an instrument in a concert, you tune it. So like that, we are taking some time to fine-tune the body, fine-tune the mind. So the mind is focused, it is not scattered all around the place. After meditation, the mind is more centered, mind is more alert. We are able to think of creative ideas. We are able to tap into the reservoir of intuition. The flash of intuition strikes more frequently after meditation. Otherwise, the mind gets caught up by regurgitating the same thoughts again and again. The intuitive thoughts are eclipsed by all these chitta vrittis. So, Abhyasa is that which we do in order to transcend the chitta vrittis, or you can say to stand there, abiding in the self. That is Abhyasa. That's how he defines Satra Sthitau Yatno Abhyasa. And he gives one more sutra for Abhyasa, where he talks about 4 ingredients of a high quality yoga practice. There are 4 ingredients for a high quality yoga practice. And what are they? Is what you see in the whiteboard. And we are going to look at these 4 now. What are the 4 ingredients for a high quality yoga practice? And the sutra goes, anyone knows the sutra? I know Sumitra knows. Yeah. Would you like to chat?
Satu Dirgha Kala Nairantarya Satkara Adara Asevito Trida Bhumihi.
Awesome. It's a pretty long sutra, right? Satu Dirgha Kala Nairantarya Satkara Adara Asevito Trida Bhumihi. So what it means is, Satu Dirgha Kala, the practice should be done for a long time. It's a long-term commitment, right? Long-term. The true benefits of yoga is in the long term. It is not a shortcut, basically. It's not a bandage. It's not a cosmetic fix. It fixes the root cause, not just the circumference. So it should be done for a long time. We cannot say, I've been diligently practicing yoga. I gave my heart and soul for the practice of yoga over the last weekend, right? 2 days I practiced intensely yoga. But that's only a tiny fraction of the yoga benefits. To qualify as Abhyasa, we need to commit ourselves to a long-term practice. Several years, several decades. Yogis talk about several lifetimes. Several lifetimes of yoga sadhana. So long time, Satu Dirgha Kala, that is the first ingredient. And you can imagine why this is a good idea, right? Committing ourselves to a long-term practice of yoga. The second ingredient is Nairantarya. Nairantarya means without taking a holiday. If the mind says, today is July 4th, holiday for everybody. So let me take a holiday from yoga mat. So yogi doesn't work that way. They practice Abhyasa on a regular schedule. Now, it doesn't mean it's should be done every day. It could be done, say, if you commit yourself once in 2 days or 6 times a week. Or in some traditions of yoga, in Ashtanga tradition, for example, Ashtanga Vinyasa of Pattabhi choice, they take the full moon and the new moon day off for their practice. That's okay. You're still in a rhythm. It is not an impulsive, okay, today I don't feel like doing asana, so I'm going to sleep. It's not like that. It's a predetermined schedule. There is a certain rhythm in the practice of yoga. That is okay. But the point here is, there is no break in the sense, whatever schedule that you have fixed for yourself, or Anushasana, you do it without deviating from it, without a break. Nairantarya.
But what do you do during times when you fall sick?
Yes. And even then you can practice Abhyasa. It doesn't mean you jump into a yoga mat and do Surya Namaskars or intense yoga practices. As we saw, Abhyasa can be practiced every moment in our life. Perhaps when the body is really sick, resting the body and taking time to sleep might be the Abhyasa. That is Abhyasa at that time. In that moment, what brings the mind to a place of centeredness is resting. So let me jump into that practice of resting. So each moment, whatever is needed is contextual. Right? As we saw, couch potato, they need to do intense yoga, intense asanas, do a lot of movements. But if an angry person does a lot of power yoga, you can imagine what happens. Right? The anger will now get transformed into rage. Right? So they need to calm down. So depending on the context, you select what is the best abhyasa, what is the best step forwards, next best step, vikrama, victorious step, vikrama. So that is what we do, abhyasa. So we saw dirgha kala and then nairantarya. The third one is very interesting. He uses the word satkara. Satkara. Satkara is a difficult word to translate in English. Satkara has different facets. I'm just going to give several different facets of Satkara. So one of them I wrote down, with respect. So doing the practice with respect, doing the practice with an honor, doing the practice with enthusiasm, cheerful attitude. You're looking forward to it. So that is satkara. So doing the practice with honor and respect and with enthusiasm and the cheerfulness, not with an attitude of grumbling. Oh, I promised my spouse that I will do yoga every day. So I have to drag my body into the yoga mat. And the body is very unwilling. It is kicking and screaming. No, please don't take me there. I don't like it. But we have to do it with so much resistance. That is the opposite of satkara. Satkara means you wake up in the morning, you look at the watch, 3:59 a.m. Oh, in 1 minute, trying to practice yoga. And with a big beaming smile on the face, you jump into the yoga mat. Like the, the smile of the bright sunshine smile. You jump into the yoga with that enthusiasm. That is satkara. And you can
We have the
imagine, right?
satkara.
Satkara.
I said we have the satkara when we come for your lecture.
Yes, Patanjali has created such an amazing wisdom that it's actually enlivening. Right? When we listen to this knowledge, it's enlivening. So satkara is that enthusiasm that we bring. The next one, the fourth one, is asevito. Seva means to serve. Seva, to serve. You know where the word seva comes from? When you split the words, it's sa iva. Sa iva. That means saha iva or sa iva. You can define it in two ways. Saha iva means like him or like her. Like Ishvara. You see? Just like how the divine is serving everyone. Like that, we want to model giving generously. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, it reminds me of a shloka, 18th chapter. I think it is the 43rd verse of the 18th chapter. Krishna says, when he's describing the qualities of a Kshatriya, warrior. Warrior is not just somebody who's skillful at fighting. They're also very generous. They serve, he says. Dhanam Ishvara Bhavascha, he says. Dhanam Ishvara Bhavascha. Just like how Ishvara serves, with that same amount of generosity, they serve people. Like a king serves people. King is not trying to get stuff from people, they're serving people. So with that bhava is seva. And asevito means with complete attitude of serving. Usually when we add a prefix a, that will negate it. But when we add the prefix a means complete. For example, anand. Nanda means happiness. Anand means supremely happy. They are in bliss. Anand. I mention this because it's a person by name Anand in our team. Many people call him Anand. You can see the whole meaning is now reversed, right? A short a will negate the meaning. But he's a happy person. So we have to truly call him Anand. Right? So asevito means with a complete attitude of service. So what do we serve? What is it that we are serving? You see, when we practice exercise sometimes, we may not do it with serving attitude. We do it with the attitude of demand. Demand. I'm going to exercise the body. Oh body, you better show me those biceps in 6 months. Right? It's a demand. Like a business transaction. I'm practicing, but you have to show me the results. Or you better lose 70 pounds, whatever. So going with a demand is the opposite of asevita. Asevita means the body has been serving us, mind has been serving us throughout our life. It is now my turn to serve the body and mind. Let me give the body and mind some space to experience like exhilarating stretch, experience peace, the silence in the mind. So let me serve the body and mind, this vehicle. Also, I serve the world by being a more kind person, by being a more peaceful person, right? So by doing these sadhanas, we're actually serving the world because we present to the world a higher, better version of ourselves. You'll agree, right? Somebody asked Ramana Maharishi, with a lot of enthusiasm, they asked, oh, I made in my business, it was so successful. I made a lot of money. I want to serve the world. Please tell me how I can serve the world best. And you know what Ramana Maharishi said? Be happy. By you being happy, you will serve the world, because when we are happy, we are inspired to do actions to share the happiness with others. We are inspired to share the happiness with others. In fact, the word puja means we think it's worship, asking God, oh, I'm going to do puja, you give me this. We have a long list of demand, right? But the true meaning of the word puja means Purnat Jayate iti puja. Purna means full, with the heart full of happiness or gratitude or appreciation. Whatever action is inspired from that place. Ja means Janma, to be born. So whatever action is born from a heart that is filled with gratitude or love or happiness, that is puja. You see? So a person who does sadhana and their mind is so quiet, their heart is so full with the happiness, they're embodying ananda, right? Then they're inspired to do actions to serve the world, to spread that happiness to others. So that is asevito, with attitude of service. And then drida bhumihi, when these four attributes of high quality yoga practice is established, then the goal becomes firmly grounded. Drida bhumihi. Drida means firm. Bhumi means grounded. Drida bhumihi. Later on in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali mentions the opposite of Drida bhumi as an obstacle in the path of yoga. It is called alabdha bhumi. Alabdha bhumikatva. It's one of the 9 obstacles. Here, Patanjali says the antidote for alabdha bhumi is drida bhumi. Drida bhumi. If you want to firmly establish yourself in yoga, then these are the 4 ingredients of the high quality yoga practice.
One question. In the morning when we were practicing, you spoke about, like, we talking about time, like you said, oh, it can be 10 years, 7 months, 20 years, like. So, of course, yeah, long term, but my teacher had tells me that generally, as a general rule, they take at least 7 years of consistent practice without any major breaks. Then you're considered a yoga practitioner, not a yogi, but like a real practitioner.
Sadhaka,
now, yeah,
abhyasi.
Yeah, now you're entering. That is when you're actually entering like a realm, and like she's like always like take it easy, and like you have the most important is to stay consistent and to do, because at least 7 years of consistency means okay, you're getting somewhere now. So that's why that 7 years was step 1. So is there a time like that, or it does not matter, or is it just a general rule which may apply to majority of people, but there are other sutras?
Yeah, different teachers give different numbers, but we should also realize that different realms of our existence, for example, the body versus mind, the transformation can happen more easily at one level, but in the other level, it takes more time. So, for example, to memorize something, it takes time. So, if you want to memorize a Bhagavad Gita shloka, do we take 1 week or do we take 1 day? Some people can do it in 1 day. Do you take 6 months? So that could be, you can draw a distribution, how much time it will take. By the way, this science behind how to train the mind for different activities. One of them could be memorizing. They have done a lot of research on it. My PhD advisor, although the subject of my PhD thesis was in electrical and electronics engineering, he also published papers on learning styles, how students learn. Because not only did he was he a great researcher in his own field, he also wanted to be a great teacher. He's a great teacher. He has won many best teacher awards, and he wanted to study how students learn. What is the best way to memorize? For example, to memorize a Bhagavad Gita shloka, do you chant the shloka 10 times every day, or Do you chant the 100 times in one day, and after a week, chant 100 times? Every Sunday, chant 100. So you have the same resource. You want to memorize, by the time you chant, say 500 times. Would you chant every Sunday 500 on every once a week, or split it into a more even spread? Every day you chant a little bit, or morning some few number and evening few number? Or would you chant in the same session all 500? Chant 500. Would you remember it tomorrow? Right? Now, it's fascinating. I've tried it on myself because I memorize many of the slokas and stuff. Which is the best, most skillful way? And the answer is, it has to do with the combination of short term and long term. We need to leverage the long term aspect of retention in the memory. If you imagine that chanting the sloka 10,000 times now, and tomorrow you will be able to remember it, maybe you will for a short term, but after 6 months, it will all evaporate, right? So the point I'm making is, in order to create a transformation, it requires time. So how much time does it require? For the mind is different from the transformation it requires in the body. Some people are very close to the transformation. Maybe one day of abhyasa will bring them to enlightenment. Some people, it is said, just by listening to the Yoga Sutras, they become enlightened. In fact, Patanjali has structured the Yoga Sutras that way. The first chapter of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you may remember, I mentioned the chapter title, right? Anyone remembers? I know Sumitra does, but anyone else remembers?
Samadhipada.
Samadhi, right? Can you imagine Patanjali starting the Yoga Sutras with Samadhi? Many of us think of Samadhi as one of the ultimate goals of yoga. So if somebody is new to Yoga Sutras, you want to start something simpler, right? Okay, let's start with some asanas, let's deal with the body. Maybe first chapter is some ABC. But here, you open the kindergarten little textbook on mathematics and you see calculus there, right? So Samadhi, Patanjali begins the Yoga Sutras with Samadhi. The idea is, the first chapter is actually not for beginning students of yoga. It is for adept yogis who are very close to the edge of Kaivalya or Samadhi experience, that he wants to deal with them first. They are so close. Why do they need to wait for 12 years before, they have to do all these practices and wait for everybody? So let me graduate you first. So for those abhyasis, the first chapter alone is enough. They don't need to read the second, third, and fourth chapter of Yoga Sutras. In fact, there is a class of yogis even beyond that. They don't even need to read the Yoga Sutras. They're called Niruddha. There are 5 types that sage Vyasa talks about. 5 types. Would you like to know?
Yes.
What are the 5 types? And after this, we will take a break. Not the chai break, but we're going to take a break where we're going to move the body. And I'm going to lead you through some sadhana, some abhyasa we're going to do. So the 5 types of people, what are they? The first one is called Kshipta, Kshipta. Kshipta. Kshipta means a person who has a scattered state of mind, defocused, not just scattered, but even shattered state of mind, broken, shattered state of mind. They cannot focus at all. And they are caught up in a lot of rajoguna, turbulence in the mind. That is Kshipta. The second state of mind that Vyasa lists is Mudha, M-U-D-H-A, Mudha. Mudha means the mind is filled with tamoguna, laziness, Mudha, delusion. That laziness causes ignorance in the mind. They don't know who they are. They don't know what are their goals. They enroll themselves in a study. For example, they enroll themselves in the college, and in the middle of their study, they forget why they are there, and they get into bad habits and things like that. You see? So that is Mudha, deluded state of mind that comes through ignorance. And the predominant quality there is tamas. That's the second state, Mudha. The third one is called Vikshipta. Vikshipta means distracted state of mind. Sometimes, occasionally, it becomes focused. So it is not a shattered state where it's always broken. Sometimes it is caught up by rajas and it's turbulent. Sometimes it's caught up by tamas and it is lazy, it becomes a couch potato. Sometimes it is sattvic, and mind is clear, and they're able to see, oh, I want to be a good student, I want to excel in this. Those ideas come in the mind. So these three keep changing with time. This is called vikshipta state of mind. Mind keeps changing. The next one is ekagra. The fourth one is ekagra state of mind, which means the mind is focused. The person has the ability to consolidate the mental energies in one point. It is not jumping around like a monkey. It is consolidated in one place. That is ekagra. And the last one is called, anyone knows? Niruddha. Niruddha, which is another synonym for nirodha that we saw yesterday. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Niruddha means, again, this rudd word comes from encircling. Rudd, rudyate means to encircle. Niruddha, nitaram rudyate. That means you have completely controlled the mind and it always listens to you. And then Vyasa presents these 5 types of people and he says which parts of Yoga Sutras are relevant for which type of people. So would you like to know which parts of Yoga Sutras? So let's start with the 5th one first. Niruddha. Vyasa says Niruddha people have already attained the highest. They don't need to read the Yoga Sutras. Whatever Yoga Sutra says, they have already attained that place. Remember yesterday we said, for a person who's already happy, no discipline is needed. Discipline is needed only when we are not happy. We want to regulate ourselves with all these abhyasas. So for a Niruddha person, no Yoga Sutra, nothing is needed. They're already there. They don't need to do any abhyasas. Now for the Ekagra person, which is the 4th type, Ekagra, Vyasa says, the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras alone is enough. Because they have so much control over their mind. The mind listens to them. It is one-pointed. And the first chapter, the Samadhi Yoga alone is enough. They don't need to do the rest of the Yoga Sutras. Maybe some of you are in that state. You don't have to study the 2nd chapter. Or maybe you're a Niruddha. Yoga Sutra is not needed. So that is for Ekagra people, the first chapter is alone enough. And then we have the Vikshipta state. Vikshipta state, the rest of the Yoga Sutras and including the first chapter, the entirety of the Yoga Sutras is actually meant for Vikshipta state. They have to study the whole Yoga Sutras. They also study the Samadhi Pada, although some of the practices may be not directly accessible. They have to start by asanas first. The first chapter might be a little too much or esoteric for them. But the first chapter gives a goal. It gives them a direction to work towards. If they don't know that yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, they will think yoga is asana. And they will, full life, they will practice a lot of complicated asanas. And it will sidetrack them in the final goal. So it is a good idea to state the final goal first. That's what first chapter does. So in that way, it is useful for a Vikshipta. And the rest of the chapters will give step-by-step, systematic set of practices to get them there. What about other 2 people, right? Kshipta and Muda. Vyasa says, those 2 types of people, they will not even be interested in yoga. Don't disturb them. So the Yoga Sutras, don't try to assert them in their experience. See, it should come from their own proactive endeavor to the path of yoga. That's why it's called Anushasanam, right? Self-inspired discipline. So if they're not looking for it, if they say, oh, this 1 hour that I spend inside the yoga mat, if I put that effort at work, I can make $1 million more, right? So things like that. If they don't see the value, don't disturb them. Vyasa says, it doesn't mean that we are cruel to them, that we are not sharing the gifts of yoga. It is available whenever they want. If they say, please teach me yoga, I'm ready now. It's there. But the point is that life experience will allow them to graduate to the next step. A Kshipta person will become a Vikshipta at some time. and they will realize the value of all these practices. Or a Muda person will suddenly wake up. They've been sleeping, being a couch potato. They suddenly realize, oh, this consequences of leading a life of being a lazy person is not very good, not very palatable. So let me try to change myself. So it will come naturally, and at that time, yoga is always available. So that is the idea here. I guess most of us are in Vikshipta, right? Unless one of you is Ekagra or Niruddha. I'm sure none of us here are Kshipta or Muda, because if you are in one of the first two states, we will not be here. We'll be making $1 million elsewhere, right? We'll be doing something else or watching a movie, especially on a long weekend, right? So the 4th weekend. So these are the 5 Chitta Bhumis. Vyasa calls them Chitta Bhumayaha. Chitta Bhumayaha, Chitta Bhumis. The 5 grounding, 5 states of the Chitta. And he gives clarity on how Yoga Sutras are relevant for each of the 5 Chitta Bhumayaha. So we looked at the 4 ingredients of a high quality yoga practice. And what is the practice, right? Tatra sthitau yatnobhyasaha, the methods that you use to abide in the self. And before we jump into the next half of the equation, which is Vairagya, I hope the Zoom people have the picture of the whiteboard. Okay.
Yeah, we got the picture.
4 abhyasas, the 4 ingredients, and the Vairagya we're going to see next. But before that, we're going to take a short break. Time now is 3:06 Central Time. I think we are exactly at the 1 hour mark. And I think it's a good idea. We're not going to take a big break now. It's not like a coffee break. I'm going to lead you to a practice, through a practice. This is what my teacher used to do when we had long. So we will do a practice now, or shall we take a short bathroom break?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. We will take a 4.5 minute break and we'll come back.